Good afternoon and welcome back to Gulfstream Park, and thank you for joining us here on Gulfstream today. I'm Gabby Gaudette, joined by Acacia Courtney. We have 10 races on tap today. We had 2 days off, but really excited to get to this week, and of course looking forward to the weekend. We have some nice stakes action too.
We do. Always something fun coming up on the weekends. Of course, the countdown is getting closer and closer to the Pegasus World Cup. Don't forget also on January 21st we have Sunshine Millions as well as the Eclipse Awards right here at Gulfstream Park, and then the 28th is that game-changing day in our sport with the Pegasus World Cup. We were just talking about some plans this morning, and really just the whole place is buzzing with excitement.
It is. It really has been buzzing, especially since last week when California Chrome did ship in for the connections, and interesting to see him kind of leading up to potentially his work that will happen on Saturday. So all things are coming together nicely here for the Pegasus World Cup. But we do have 10 races today to look at, and our featured wagering menu we'll get to right now. We start things off in race 1, that dollar rolling super high five. It does start with race 1. It has to be with 7 or more betting interest. So we do start in race 1. As we get to the first race as well, it kicks off the 50-cent early pick 5. That is races 1 through 5 and is a mandatory payout. As we look ahead to race 5, it kicks off the 20-cent Rainbow 6. They did take it down last Sunday, so we start from the bottom today. The late pick 5 does kick off in race 6, the final 5 races of the day. And we had some showers throughout the area this morning, but it's really dried up nicely, and I think the turf could have used a little bit of moisture on it too. So we are fast and firm, and we start things off at 12:35 p.m. We'll get to the first race here, and we'll start off with your pick 5.
All right, we will indeed give a look at my ticket. It'll be $48 for me to start it off. I went 3 deep in the opening race. You can see very early in the wagering, but 9 to 5 on that number 3 Queen Roller. That is a horse that I used, but liked a couple others in there as well. Now, I only ended up using 2 deep in the second race, but that is a pretty tough race to handicap. Lots of speed in there, but I did use Dr. J-Dub and Arborville, and I spread in the third race. Very nice, actually very solid high-level maiden claiming in there. 2 deep in the last 2 legs to keep it affordable at $48.
All right, race 1 starts us off. A maiden $16,000 race, 5.5 furlongs onto the main track. Of course, super high 5 wagering available in here as well. And right now, at least on the morning line, the 7 to Honor and Love is a first-time starter for Ralph Nix, and one to figure to take some money.
It certainly is, and if you look at her work tab, she's been working very steadily. 3 really sharp works coming into today. 3 furlongs and 36 and 3 most recently, and then a couple of 48 and change for 4 furlongs prior to that. So it looks like she's coming in sharp. I had some reservations with this barn debuting at the maiden 16 level. Don't do it that often, but she is certainly one to respect, and Ralph Nix does do well with first-time starters.
He does do great work with first-time starters, but we'll show a statistic for Ralph Nix with his maiden claiming first-time starters on the dirt, primarily at Gulfstream, and it is a negative ROI, only 14%. They finish in the money a bunch of times, but it's only $1.07 return, so you're not really making money off of betting horses like this. Not to say that she won't be primed and ready to go to win first time out, but this was a very difficult race because I was trying to find stats, at least positive stats for other trainers. We see David Brady to the inside with maiden claimer first time starters, 0 for 28, and then we see Antonio Santa with the number 2, Princess Knoll with maiden claiming first-time starters on the dirt, 2 for 53. So it was really difficult. That's why I kind of just diverted to the 5 Banditi song.
I did too, and I think it's because of the reason that I landed on her anyway. Now, she has her own questions, that's for sure. This will be her first time on a fast main track. She has had 2 races that have been ranked off the turf, both of those on sealed sloppy tracks, and they've both been solid. She's had a couple of solid races on the turf as well, so her first time on the fast main track. But the race that she's coming out of, I think, was a pretty productive one. The 4th place finisher, Misty Ballerina, came back to win, and the 2nd place finisher, Can't Catch the Racks, was second behind her once again. So those horses went on to run pretty solidly the next time out. And I thought that Banditi Song ran a pretty good race. She is getting a little bit of class relief too.
And she's never tried a fast main track, so there's always that unknown factor that she can improve on a fast main track. And not only that, that it was a kind of productive race last time, but she was also glued to the rail that day, and it really didn't look like it was an awful place to be, but definitely not the better place to be. It looked like horses staying out in the maybe 3 to 4 path were having a better advantage on the day. So I think with all of those factors, Bandetti's Song could definitely improve. So that is race 1 as we get to the second, going out to the turf at 5 furlongs for this starter optional claiming event. And at first glance of this race, Acacia, it looks like a lot of speed signed up.
It did, and I just looked and looked and looked for a horse that might be a closer. And it seemed like the problem in this race was the horses that were really labeled as closers were maybe not up to the same class as some of the speed horses in here. You do have horses like Dr. J. Dub, who's a Grade 3 winner. We both, interestingly enough, and I know Ron did as well, landed on Arborville, who seems to keep just behind the leaders. Now, he does have to rebound off of his last performance, which was on Claiming Crown Preview Day at Gulfstream Park West in the PD Lucky, but that was going 7.5 furlongs. I think he's more effective at the 5 furlong distance. He's a 3-time winner at this distance out of 5 starts, and I like him to stalk a bit. He's run down early pace leaders before.
And it just looks like he's one that runs a little bit better on a firmer surface. It looked like a very tiring surface last time out that he comes out of at Gulfstream Park West. He's got a great outside post position. He has the ability to rate and stalk, and I don't think he's that bad class-wise. So I think that of some of the stalkers and closers, this is probably the horse you want, and I like him cutting back in distance off of that performance too. But the horse to beat in here on paper would be the 5, Dr. J. Dub. I just thought that he might potentially get some pressure on the front end. Sometimes we see it's very difficult to predict the pace scenario of these 5 furlong sprints specifically. So he might just wire the field, or he could get some pressure. Maybe he can turn back pressure and his class will prevail. Who knows?
Absolutely. Well, he, as I alluded to earlier, won the Grade 3 Turf Monster at Parks back in September. He showed that early speed that day, managed to hang on to get the win. He's been working really sharply since, came back after a bit of a freshening, again on Claiming Crown Preview Day in the stage player. And he was, I remember speaking to Jenna Antonucci at that time, kind of shaking off some cobwebs after that layoff, after that big performance in the Grade 3. He did have about 3 speed horses in that race too, which didn't favor him. And then last time in the Canterbury, he was drawn outside, tried to get the lead. Just a ton of horses came closing. He will take some pressure early today, or it could just be that when you think everybody's going to go, nobody goes, and that'll help him out for sure.
And like a crazy slow pace on the front end too. But one thing's for sure, you and I and Ron all landed on the same top selection for the first and second race, so maybe it's as easy as that. Maybe we have the cold double right there.
I hope so.
We'll see. I did throw in the 7 Chia Ghost. I like the rider switch there to Paco Lopez today, and he had a little bit of a trouble trip last time out. We'll turn our attention to the third race, upper level maiden claiming event in for that $75,000 tag, 6 furlongs on the main track, and we have a heavy favorite on the morning line of the 3, Divine Miss Gray, who did debut on a muddy track first time out, and we'll go back and take a look at that spotlight.
This was back at the end of October, and I put this filly on top. I do have some reservations of her. This was the muddy track. It was going 6 furlongs as well. She had a stalking trip, and she ran after Lady Alexandra, who ended up finally getting over to the turf and was 3rd in the Ginger Brew last time out. So she came strongly out of that race. But I thought that Divine Miss Gray ran very well in there. Maybe she was still a little bit green in that race. It was her debut. They stretched out to 1 1/16 miles on the turf next time, and that certainly didn't go well. But she does have a nice stalking ability. Would I single her in this spot? No, especially at the short price that you're definitely bound to get on her. But hopefully she can improve on a fast track like she did in the mud.
And I like the fact that she showed a little bit of early speed. And as you said, Lady Alexandra faring well going against Stakes Company last weekend in the Ginger Brew. To me, maybe it's a little bit of a quick drop there because, you know, she did actually run quite well first time out against Maiden Special Weight Company. And it was a very decent field. So with that, I go to the 4, Ruth's Lotus as the top selection. And I know everybody primarily thinks that Bill Mott, he needs a couple of starts with his horses horses in order to find the winner circle, but we do have a statistic here for his maiden claiming first-time starter sprinting on the dirt, and it's actually a great statistic. He's 5 for 13, so 38%, a positive ROI over $4, and he finishes in the money 54% of the time. So I found that stat. I like the progression of her workouts. Jose Lezcano in the saddle. She's by City Zip. She's got some precocity in her bloodline, so I'm just trying to find an alternative option.
And that absolutely could be the key. And you often hear, oh, don't bet Belmont first-time starters. And if you look down just quickly, it's 11%. So that doesn't mean it never happens. And we've seen some really nice first-time starters. We know Belmont is an exceptional trainer. So if you are looking for a horse that might be a little bit of a better price versus Divine Miss Gray. But a horse that we both had some interest in was the number 1, Katrina Sway, who is a little bit of an unknown as well. But this one is trying the dirt for the first time after 2 races on the synthetic.
And we'll show a stat for Stuart Simon with his horses coming from synthetic to dirt. And he's actually 38% positive ROI over $2.89, 63% in the money. So those are strong stats, but they're very limited to other tracks, not specifically Gulfstream. So I think that you have to pay attention to the odds that you get on this horse, because a lot of the times the Woodbine shippers who are either making lateral moves or maybe a drop in class with Javier Castellano, they're such undervalued just because Javier is in the saddle. So something to be cognizant of, but of course the 3 Divine Miss Gray is going to take a lot of money. And, ooh, little butterfly. Hopefully that's good luck.
Hopefully. Maybe as the horse you're talking about, maybe that's your sign for today.
We very well could see it, but a very interesting maiden claiming event there in the 3rd as we get to the 4th, 7 furlongs on the main track. Non-winners of 3 lifetime condition in for that 62.50 tag. And Acacia, you land on the 7, Golden Pirate.
I did, and this was a race that I had a hard time settling. I can't blame you for picking Morgan's Harbor on top. I just thought it looked like it was kind of a last-ditch effort for this horse that used to be in such great form and just recently hasn't seemed to be in good form at all. So I did go to a horse that's also taking another drop and is going back to the dirt. Now, earlier on in his career, Golden Pirate was running very solidly in competitive maiden special weight early in his career, meaning back in 2015. In the early part of 2015, took a huge layoff from November of 2015 to December of 2016, shook off some of the cobwebs last time against 16,000 non-winners of 3 on the turf. So it's now a drop, but I do like that Luis Saez stays. Maybe this is just the spot that this horse needs to get that win off the layoff.
And that's where I came into question with this horse dropping so aggressively off of that layoff and for that $16,000 tag. And now once again, they're dropping him once again. So we're talking about 2 class droppers that have just kind of been going down the claiming ranks. One of them is the 2 Morgan's Harbor, and I agree with you. I think that's fair that maybe last time out was a last-ditch effort, but he did have excuse in that. He reared up at the break. He was unprepared at the start. Now the blinkers come off, potentially so that he can see his company and make him a little bit more aggressive. But in the past, he actually has shown speed at this distance, so I hope that's what they revert to today, and I hope he doesn't get off to the same start as he did last time.
He's been working well too, and as you said, he did rear at the start last time, just didn't really make up any ground afterwards either. But of course, you do always have to respect the class dropper who does have back class. I also had a little bit of interest in the number 5, Nick's Danger. There's not a lot to go off in terms of his dirt form, as he's only actually run once on the dirt, and to be honest, it was a pretty terrible performance at Hawthorne back at the end of last year in 2015. So in fact, 2 years ago, but he's been working really strongly. We've seen Alejandro Memo with a couple of surprise winners, and this one he has shown some speed. He did show some speed a couple times. I wonder if the surface switch will just help him rebound off of that last performance plus some class relief.
We could see, but I think it pays to be a little bit creative in that race and maybe spread with several horses if you're looking at the early pick 5. With that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll tackle the 20-cent Rainbow 6. No carryover today, but we also have that late pick 5 to wager on 2 right after this commercial break.
January 28th at Gulfstream Park, an icon takes flight. The world's richest thoroughbred horse race. 12 of the sport's finest horses. One race. $12 million $1,000 on the line. Watch, wager, witness. Go to PegasusWorldCup.com for more.
And Ghost Zipper is pulling away. Ghost Zipper blows them away with an eye-opening performance. Awesome again has won. Ghost Zipper kicking clear. Summon Ghost.
Welcome back to Gulfstream today. Gabby Gaudette joined by Acacia Courtney, and we'll take a look at the 20-cent Rainbow Six. They did take it down last Sunday, so we start from the bottom here, but it is a fun sequence, and I think with some of the scratches, you do have the ability to maybe find a single, and I did just that to keep it on the more affordable side, thinking that you have to have some coverage in the first couple of races. So we'll show that ticket here now. Going to be using $57.60 is the cost. 3 horses in the first leg of the sequence, 3, 8, 10. By 4, keying off of Morse code in race 8. A key scratch in there, in my opinion, so I did land on that horse. And as we get to race 9, just the 4 and 8, and 4, 8, 12 to round it out. We get to the turf course here, 9 furlongs onto the turf for this allowance optional claimer. And we'll start off with the number 3, Lead Along, who we saw come here last time out and actually put in a pretty game performance.
He did put in a game performance. That was back on December 16th, and we'll show that performance from this 5-year-old mare. She's very lightly raced for a 5-year-old, and she was beaten by just 3/4 of a length in this race. And you see she's the number 2 that day. She just doesn't have much early speed coming right from the gate, but she did settle nicely behind the leader. She had to go outside about 3 wide. Somersault, the winner that day, I think got the edge because she was along the rail, and it looked like Lead Along, you see very wide there in the stretch, even still 3 wide, trying to hold on. And I thought she put in a very game effort after that maiden win 2 starts back.
I agree. Even her maiden win, as you alluded to there at Churchill, we saw Glory to the Kitten come back to win a maiden special weight here at Gulfstream, getting an 80 by her speed figure for that. So the races that she's been coming out of have actually been quite nice, and I thought that that was a pretty decent level of competition last start too. So you and I both agree on her, or you go against her with the 8 American Cowgirl, another one though that comes out of a very strong race.
She's coming out of a very strong race. She was wide in the stretch last time as well, squeezed back early. I think that she had some excuses, and I think ordinarily she'll be much closer to the pace, and that's why tactically I gave her the edge in here. Lead Along is definitely, after those 2 performances, and respect for the connections, a horse to be respected. But I think because American Cowgirl, she came off of about a 3-month layoff last time out, finishing behind Lobelia, who was second in the Tiara as well, came back with that nice allowance win last time, and American Cowgirl was beaten just by a length and a quarter with all of those hiccups in that race she had to deal with too.
And if you go back and actually watch that allowance race, it looked like Lobelia got a little bit of a earlier jump on American Cowgirl. She made her move a bit earlier, and I think that made all the difference. I don't think there was any beating Lobelia in that race, but I do think if maybe she made a bit more of an earlier move, she could have gotten up for second. But she was very wide, unfortunately. There's nothing you can do with that sometimes if you're trying to make a move at the quarter pole. So I agree with you. I think that she is one to respect. We have the 10 in charge of me, 4-1 on the morning line. I think 2 comes out of a strong race last time out at Aqueduct, and of course the 11 Lily's Dream, one for Mike Maker that you gave some interest to.
And she's trying to go for her 3rd win in a row. She won with starter allowance 2 starts back, then in condition claimers last time out.
Let's get to race 6, a very nice maiden special weight onto the turf at 1 1/16, and of course this kicks off the final pick 5 of the day. So Acacia, let's see your strategy.
All right, we'll give a look at my ticket, and it's not an easy way to start it off in this 6th race. Kitten's Joy, very well represented, actually 4 by Kitten's Joy in this turf race, and I did go 4 deep, not using all of the Kitten's Joys exclusively, but 4 horses to start it off. 2 deep in the 7th race, Canarsie Kid, and I have have some interest in Zanto as well. I think you have the right single with Morse Code. In the 8th race, I did consider singling him, but protectively did use Louis' Baby Boy as well. 3 deep in the 9th race, and then 2 to round it out. $48 for me.
And I thought this was actually a pretty tough race. Multiple ways to go, as you said. Kitten's Joy well represented in here. You gave the slight preference to the 7 Cuddle Kitten, who will go back and take a look at her most recent performance. It was a defeat, but she was game in defeat.
She was very game in defeat, and you see she was way ahead of the rest of the field, the number 3 there in the Ramsey colors, and she ended up being collared. She kind of floated wide on the first turn as well by another horse. Then was, excuse me, I'm looking at another one, but she was game in defeat there. She was so far ahead of the rest of the field. I hope that she kind of maintains the speed, maybe settles a little bit early, shows that speed, but doesn't have to be so far of the rest of the field.
And that's the thing, though. We do have some other horses in here that if they do decide to get aggressive at the break, she could figure to have some company on the front end. The 3 Ginza is another one that you use at a price for trainer Bill Mott. We'll go back and show the break and the stretch run of her last performance, too.
And this was that eventful trip that I was alluding to. She was the number 4 that day. She took a right turn at the start. It really was an eventful race for her, and she finished 3rd. It was a distant 3rd at that, though. That was her first time with the blinkers as well. I think maybe they were hoping she would show maybe a little bit more speed or maybe a little bit more focus. She is the one that was floated wide on the first turn by the number 2 horse. She was wide in the stretch as well and tried to run on and kicked in again. It was a dominant winner that day, but I thought she actually has some raw talent there. She's beautifully bred, again, by Kitten's Joy. She's actually a full sister to multiple Breeders' Cup winner Stephanie's Kitten, who won most recently the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf in 2015. And this was the 3rd start, again, the first start with the blinkers for Ginza.
And that's the thing. I don't know what to make of this race because we see this explosive win from the winner that day. She came from she made a last to first move, but also the pace held together well, where she just kind of flattened. And not to say that she can't improve, maybe going to a firm course. Maybe she's going to improve first time getting Lasix on a firm course, second time blinkers. There's been all these adjustments that they've made to her, and maybe that could be it. She's a nice big price there, too. For what it's worth, the winner of that last race, she came back to be defeated on an off-the-turf race at the fairgrounds. She was 2nd, I believe, at 50 cents to the dollar, so beaten favorite in her next start. And I just tried to get creative in here with a 5 Moonlit Cove for Tony Dutrow because I think that was a good race last time out. We saw Okinawa. She was a very impressive winner. She just kind of rocketed out of the gate, and it was really all said and done from there. But a couple of those other horses on the bottom side, or in the rest of the field, they were coming out of strong races, and they're kind of the same horses that were running against Bellevue, who won against Stakes Company last weekend. So I just think it was a strong race. And Tony Dutrow, I know this is a really small sample size, but I try to find stats for Tony Dutrow, especially here in South Florida. And for this particular move from maiden special weight turf, going a distance of ground in their second start, he does win, small sample size, but they've been pretty good prices, but all of them have really run decently. So I think we can see an improved performance from this filly, thinking that she might meet a bit more manageable company today than last time out, and she already has a race underneath her belt.
And this is a race where you can make a case for so many different horses in here, and as we've just tried to do with a couple of our top selections. And then you have a first-time starter from Chad Brown with Javier Castellano in the saddle that both of us used more towards the bottom of our trifecta, superfecta tickets, but it's not really a horse you can leave off with those connections.
Not at all. It was funny last week. I think there was a turf race, a 2-turn turf race, a maiden race, I think it was, and we were all trying to get creative, and it wound up being a Chad Brown exacta. Go figure. And the 4 Enchanting Kitten definitely fits the bill for Ken and Sarah Ramsey. Javier Castellano in the saddle. We'll show a stat here for Chad Brown, though, with maiden special weight, first-time starters making their 3-year-old, or making their debut as a 3-year-old on the turf. It is kind of lower, and I thought that that was shocking. 12 out of 82, 15%, and a negative ROI. So see, make what you can of it. I mean, you have to use this horse protectively, but I think it's more interesting than perhaps a Chad Brown first-time starter.
It is for sure. And as I said, you can make a case for so many horses in this field. So maybe taking that stat into account in this spot, as we do see that is a pretty sizable sample size as well. And we both went other places, but you never know when Chad Brown's going to come up and surprise you.
All right, let's get to the 7th race on the card. 5 furlongs on the turf for this non-winners of 3 lifetime. That $16,000 tag. And it looks like some of the more formful horses are kind of drawn to the outside. The 10, Xanto, is where you land.
I did, and I really wanted to put Canarsie Kid on top, who's the 12. If he didn't have the 12 post in a 5 furlong sprint on the turf, I definitely would have put him even right on top in here. But I did go to Xanto for Lisa Lewis, who's just, you can't really knock anything in his past 3 starts. He does have some speed. He was actually even taken off the pace last time out, as it was because he was tight and kind of bumped around a bit, but he still managed to be beaten only by 3/4 of a length and to be second. All of those last 3 have been on the 5 furlongs on the turf, and he's kind of worked his way up the claiming ranks as well. So I think he's in pretty good form.
He could be one that's kind of on the incline for sure. I just thought that Canarsie Kid had better back numbers, is coming out of stronger races. And in that last race, I hate the post position for this horse. And unfortunately, he was in that post position last time out too, breaking 10 of 10. And he was kind of pressing the pace about 4 wide. There were so many horses going with him. And he got caught up in a really quick pace, and I think that that played to the advantage of the 10 Xanto. Not to say that he can't run well once again today, but I thought in that particular race it was a stronger performance from Canarsie Kid. And one race to the other, pace scenarios differ, so I'm just hoping either he goes or he takes back, one of the two, but does not have to press 4 wide, because I thought that that's where it all kind of unfolded. So he's one to beat for sure. The 6, Je ne sais pas, to the inside for trainer Jason Service. We'll have a stat on Jason Service with 61 to 180 day layoffs in turf sprints. Good stats here, 30% positive ROI, 62% in the money. And I like the horse because they gave him time off of a subpar performance last time out. And this is a horse who's shown the ability to rate.
And I put him on my superfecta. I just thought it was such a lackluster performance last time out. And maybe he does have some excuses. Maybe he needed some time off. And they did, as you said, give him what seemed to be a well-deserved break after that race last time. It was at Gulfstream Park West, which is more difficult to make up ground and to close from behind. But he's also stepping up a bit in class, too. I agree. I just think that the likes of Canarsie Kid might just be better than what he's been facing.
He definitely has spotty form. He's been very sporadically placed in the past couple of years. As we get to the 8th race, it kicks off our final pick 3 of the day. Maiden special weight, 7 furlongs on the main track. And once again, another key scratch of the 3, Preservationist. He scratched last week, scratched again today.
And he scratched last week out of the turf. He was entered for the dirt today, so he's scratched again today. So we will not get to see Preservationist off of that layoff and that very impressive debut race back in June. But we both did. I don't know about you, originally had landed on the number 9 Morse code on top anyway for Shug McGahee, who debuted in some very strong races and just has been consistently running. He does have to take the next step forward, but he's been keeping good company.
He's got a lovely pedigree too, and I'm just waiting for the light bulb to click finally. He is by Tappet. He's a half to Honor Code, who obviously won the Whitney and the Met Mile. But Morse code will show a stat here for trainer Shug McGahee with these types of layoffs, coming back, sprinting on the dirt, and he does win 24% of the time and out of 41 horses. So 10 for 41, positive ROI, 61% in the money, and I think this horse is just coming out of the better races.
He certainly is. This last race, you did see Admiral Blue come back and break his maiden. I'm a Superstar broke his maiden as well. 72 and 83 buyer speed figures respectively.
And I do like the 7 a little bit here, Foreman the Foreman, because of his tactical advantage. Now, he did show a little bit of speed last time out on the turf, but he showed speed on the main track against Maiden Special Weight Company 2 starts back as well. I know that was a long time ago, but for what it's worth, the connections, they actually win second off the layoff going from turf to dirt. It's small sample size, but they've done it 3 times out of 9 starters. He does have the tactical advantage, and then you have the one, Louis Baby Boy, who could be forwardly placed at 7 furlongs.
I do think that he'll be forwardly placed. He ran a pretty solid race last time, and the thing with Louis Baby Boy is that he's just one that just never seems to quite get there, though he always does run solidly. Third last time behind Heck of a Shot, who did come back to win yet again last time out with the 91 Buyer speed figure, and that was when switching to the dirt. So I always expect something solid from Louis Baby Boy.
Well, we will see about that race. It does have a key scratch in there, but trying to find a single with the number 9 Morse code as we get to the first half of the late daily double. Race 9, 7 furlongs on the main track for this 2 other than allowance optional claimer. And I thought that this was another very interesting race, but I guess we should start off with talking about the number 8 Tail for Ruby, fresh off a stakes victory in the Safely Kept last time out.
And this was at Laurel on November 19th and got bumped and steadied a bit back at the start, so it was actually kind of far back. We'll show the braking here. You see the split screen, so keep an eye on the head-on. You see that she did get bumped a bit at the start as the number 9, and she had to go wide in the stretch and managed to pull away, and she ended up actually appearing to be much the best. And this was actually a solid stakes race as well. Ultra Brat came back to win the Tropical Park Oaks on the turf here at Gulfstream, and in this race she beat Tacrease, who was graded 2 placed, and so it was a very solid company that she was keeping, and you see she was ahead of the rest of the field even after that tough break. Interestingly enough, we do both pick against her.
We do, and I think she's definitely one to respect, though, because that was a legitimate performance. She showed the ability to kind of overcome a little bit of a slow break and show a new dimension. But I say this all the time, that generally speaking, Laurel, especially when you get into the fall and to the winter time, it's an outside closers track, so it really did guide her in that particular race. We could see Tacrease kind of taking the same route behind her, but she's definitely one that I think is getting better and better with each race underneath her belt, and I think that's what Barkley Tagg kind of said in the post-race interview when I was in Maryland, that things are just starting to click for her. Unfortunately, she got a little bit unlucky in her 2 allowance races prior to that, so by no means do I think that she is an absolute toss. I tried to get creative with maybe a little bit of a price here. You land on the 3 Battle Tucks.
Well, I respect you for going with Bon Air, who certainly won impressively 2 starts back. I'm looking for Battle Tucks to try and repeat, and this is a horse that has shown so much early speed in so many of her races. She moved into the barn of Bobby DeBona last time out, and actually did sit just a little bit off the pace. She didn't show that she had to be on the lead last time, which I did like. It showed a little bit of versatility to her. She's stretching out a little bit to the 7 furlongs as well, and I know that her 2 dirt wins have come at the 6 furlong distance, but I did like that she showed some dimension last time out.
It's good to show that, especially now that she is getting at a distance. She can maybe go to the lead and utilize her natural ability, or she can take back. So it's always good to have kind of a backup plan that you can revert to. And her last race I thought was legitimate. You look at her first 2 performances in her career, and those would kind of signify an improvement that she showed last time out. So a legitimate horse. The 4 Bon Air was one that I did have some interest in. I thought the race kind of sets up for her, given the pace scenario. It looks like there is a decent amount of pace. Subpar performance last time out. She's already 0 for 3 on the turf. You go back to her main track try 2 starts back. That was a first off the claim for trainer Joe Sharp, and that was her career best buyer. So I'm wondering if we can see an improvement from there, and you're going to get double-digit odds potentially on a horse like this.
I think you put a line through that last race for sure. It was the turf, as you mentioned. She's never won on the turf before. She also stumbled after the start, had to be wide. She just had all kinds of trouble in that race. Just put a big line through it, and you can definitely respect her off of that race 2 back. I wasn't going to leave her off of my pick 5 ticket because of that.
Okay, but the horse to beat there is the number 8 Tail for Ruby as we get to today's finale, race 10, a maiden $20,000 event going to the mile. on the turf course, and you go to the way outside with a 12 sight reading at 7-5.
Well, this was a tough race to narrow in on, and I'm very curious to see why you landed on the number 8 easier. But I did go to the class dropper, which is the 12 sight reading, who's been in special weight company in all 7 of her starts so far. She's finally going to the maiden claiming. It is an aggressive maiden claiming drop. She's going to the $20,000 tag, but she did show some promise on the turf in special weight company earlier in her career.
And she's the horse to beat. She's going to be the heavy favorite. The thing about it is the mile distance and outside post position, big drop in class for maiden special weight company. Of course, she's the horse to beat. But one horse that kind of piqued my interest was the number 8, Easier. And I know there was a bit of a mishap last time out, but I think it's encouraging, that Fernando Abreu, who I think is a fantastic horseman, keeps her in at the same level, just tries to do a surface change, and she's actually bred for it. She's by Proud Citizen. She's out of a Belong to Me mare. You get some turf influence on the bottom side, and I've seen moments of brilliance in the past, at least her showing the ability to have some speed. So if she does take a liking to the turf, who knows? She could be forwardly placed, or even part of, or even the pace setter in here.
And look, in this kind of field, in this maiden 20 level, in this it's a full field, anything could happen in this kind of race. So if you get a nice price on her, as you said, there is a little bit of turf breeding. I took a little bit of the wait and see, but like I said, anything can happen in these races. But a horse that I think is probably going to take a little bit of money is the number 5, La Boot On, who's also getting a surface switch. She has run on the turf before, and if you look at how she ran on the turf, her last turf race was pretty terrible, but she is getting a little class relief if you look just with her turf races.
She is a maiden 40 to the $20,000 tag here today. I thought that she might have needed a little bit more of a class drop in order to win a race like this, just because especially that last turf race was just so awful. But she is coming out of slightly tougher. Another horse who is taking a pretty big drop in class was the 4 Vintners Special, second time off of the layoff. The blinkers come off. She didn't do much running. She did get a little bit brushed at the start. I wouldn't say it really impacted the outcome of the race, but one that is technically dropping from maiden special weight to maiden claiming company.
She is, and she actually debuted in the barn of Franz Batz back in October of 2015. Her lone turf start was last time out against much tougher than she'll face today, taking those blinkers back off, but sticking with the turf.
I think it's a very interesting card here today, and it's fun. I think some great betting opportunities throughout the day. Once again, we have super high 5 wagering, early and late pick 5 wagering, and of course the ever popular 20-cent Rainbow 6. No carryover today, but still a fun sequence. Thank you once again for joining us here on Gulfstream today, and best of luck on today's program.